Hey guys, this is John Trent here with BountyIntoComics.com, and today I wanted to talk to you about Marvel Comics. Specifically, I wanted to talk about Marvel Comics' problems with the significance of their stories. Over the past month, we've seen at least 3 stories basically end up rewriting the storyline or wiping out some significant event to make it completely pointless. And in the 3 comics I'm going to address, we're going to look at the Mighty Thor number 706, we're going to look at Thanos number 18, and we're going to look at Captain America number 700. They all have very similar problems, which indicates to me that there's an editorial problem on Marvel's end, and it seems like there might be some kind of edict coming down on the editorial side that's causing these problems. But first, let's dig into the most recent book, The Mighty Thor number 706, which came out yesterday. And in The Mighty Thor number 706, basically what's been happening is Jane Foster is female Thor, and she is defeating the Mangog, which is this monster who's gone on a rampage and has destroyed Asgard, and the Asgardians have no way of stopping it. They've tried everything they can, but Jane Foster is able to figure out a way to stop the creature, wraps it up in the chains used to hold down Fenris, and then attaches Mjolnir to the chains and sends the hammer flying into a nearby sun. The Mangog and Mjolnir then seemingly are destroyed as they make impact with the sun. And then upon the loss of Mjolnir, Jane Foster loses her powers as Thor and is reverted back to her human form, where her body is being ravaged by cancer, which she ends up dying. And that happened in issue 705. And in issue 706, she is dead, and she's standing at the gates of Valhalla but refusing to go in, while Thor, Odin's son, decides to bring her back to life, which he succeeds in once Odin comes to his aid. And they use the God Tempest to basically act as a defibrillator and shock her back to life. Somehow she still has cancer, but that's just a whole different story. But the issue here is that they had a very Jason Aaron and artist Russell Dalterman had a very significant story with female Thor's death. It was very meaningful. It meant a lot. She sacrificed herself for people who didn't really care for her. Odin makes it very clear that he believes that she stole his son's birthright when she claimed Mjolnir for her own. And he's not really happy with her. But the sacrifice that she makes radically alters his thoughts about her. But her sacrifice had meaning. She saved an entire people who didn't really like her. She showed selflessness. She showed what being a hero means. She showed determination. It was a very well-written story with a heroic sacrifice. And it was completely undone in one issue. She didn't have to pay any consequences for her sacrifice. She was reborn basically without having to die. Even in Norse mythology, she should have been rewarded with Valhalla, and she didn't even get to achieve that. So even in that stance, she was kind of just robbed from the story perspective. And I think there could have been a lot better ways that they could have had her brought her back to life, and it could have happened sometime in the future. They could have had the Mangog actually didn't die in the sun, and he's coming back, and they need Jane Foster Thor to defeat the Mangog because she might be the only one who can do it now, etc., etc. And Thor has to go on a quest to somehow revive her, find some kind of artifact. It could even be a new artifact or an old artifact, whatever. He has to go on a quest to finally find something to revive her or something. It could have been an interesting storyline down the road. But I mean, they just made it the next issue. It's just what was the point of killing her in the first place if you're just going to bring her back in one issue? Yeah, there was a moment she had with Thor And there was a moment she had with Odin, but other than that, there was no point in even having her die. Her entire sacrifice was meaningless. What was the point? The only point seemed to be to just destroy Mjolnir, but then even then, they didn't really destroy it because they saved a piece of the hammer. So there's just, it's frustrating that this very powerful like sacrifice was just completely just washed away with her resurrection in the next issue later. And Marvel would do this in Thanos as well. So in Thanos, he's been transported into the distant past where he meets an older version of himself who's basically killed everyone. And in the last issue, they're fighting each other, and the older Thanos he's kind of become a mewling. He's despondent. He's weak. He's just kind of, I don't know, become complacent, I'd want to say. It's a very shift from the very beginning of the story, where he was just kind of the Thanos you would expect him to be. But what ends up happening is younger Thanos sees this older Thanos's kind of behavior and doesn't like what he sees, he doesn't want himself to become that. And in order to do that, he takes a fragment of the Time Stone used to transport him or the Time Gem used to transport him to the future, and powers it with the dead body of the Silver Surfer, travels back in time, and then apparently changes the timeline. So this older Thanos no longer exists, and it's just the entire storyline basically is removed from the continuity of the Marvel Universe by Thanos traveling back in time. So from a continuity standpoint, it's extremely frustrating to basically see this entire story just wiped away. Like, it was a really good story, and they just like eliminated it. And then even if you're just from a story perspective and you're looking at it just from Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw's run on Thanos, it's super frustrating, the ending, because it's just, what is the point of the rest of the story if you're just going to make it so it never happened? That seems just lazy to me. Especially because you had such interesting writing, and for Spencer and Shaw to like put all that effort into it to have their story just removed, that would frustrate me to no end. And then in Captain America number 700 by Mark Waid and Chris Samney, you have Cap dealing with a despotic force, and he's frozen, wakes up in the short future, fights off this despotic force, frees the United States. However, there's a bunch of other foreign powers that are now hounding the United States, including Russia and Dr. Doom's Latveria. And so Cap's fighting like multiple wars on multiple fronts. The United States is losing. He basically becomes depressed / he doesn't feel like there's any need to continue fighting because there's a nuclear attack that goes off. So he takes Bruce Banner's he creates this it's some kind of time travel device that from the Fantastic Four, and travels back in time, where he then also makes a heroic sacrifice just like Jane Foster Thor, and saves the day. Ends up killing himself, but his other self survives. The self that was frozen survives and continues on with his life. And in that storyline, basically, Captain America Steve Rogers, that is currently running around in continuity, has absolutely zero memory of the events in the future because he was frozen, and the other Captain America killed himself. He didn't kill himself. He sacrificed himself by blowing up a nuclear missile and making sure that Babington's forces were defeated. And this is just an ongoing problem, I think, with Marvel across the board. Their stories lack significance, and when they do have significance, they're making decisions that remove that significance in the next couple issues. I mean, by the end of a story arc, you shouldn't be removing that, like making that entire story arc become completely irrelevant. You shouldn't make someone's death become completely irrelevant in the same issue. You shouldn't make someone's death become completely irrelevant in the next issue. There should be lasting effects with these characters. You see lasting effects in the cinematic universe. We haven't seen Ronan come back since he was eliminated in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. We have not seen Red Skull come back since he was eliminated in Captain America: The First Avenger. We did not see Malekith come back after he was eliminated in Thor: The Dark World. The only real recurring villain we've seen is Loki, and he's been using his magician ways to survive. But when villains are defeated, they're defeated. I mean, even in Iron Man, Ironmonger is defeated, and we don't see from him again. There are consequences. Even now, Rhodes, he was shot and he was paralyzed, and now he's having to use Stark tech in order to continue walking. There are consequences to what happens in these movies. Bucky Barnes has lost his arm. Captain America doesn't have his shield. There are consequences to what happens, and in the comics, those consequences seemingly don't exist because the editorial teams and obviously the creators are making decisions where the stories that they write are basically completely redone or reworked out of continuity with Thanos within 5 books, and within Captain America within the same book, and then within Thor in 2 books. So it's just frustrating, and they need to fix it. They need to make stories where there's actual consequences, and they're not using cheap plot gimmicks in order to make their characters become immune to the effects of the stories. Make it real. Make it as real as you possibly can. Yes, this is fiction, but give the characters some significance. Make the readers understand that if something happens to them, it's going to happen to them. Why would I want to read a Captain America book when I know that some ridiculous plot crap is going to happen that's going to basically put Steve Rogers back to where he was? Like the entire Secret Empire thing, there was no need for me to ever read anything past that first issue where Captain America says, "Hail Hydra," because obviously Marvel isn't going to have Captain America continue saying "Hail Hydra." That's just not going to happen, because it's just, first off, it's a ridiculously stupid idea, and second off, they're going to put him back to where he was because it was a terrible idea. But they need to have good ideas where there's actual harm that comes to these characters, but they actually face danger, and that danger has consequences. I mean, you can create new characters, you can create new storylines, but you need to have this danger be real, and you need to have these characters face consequences and have to deal with those consequences. Those are some of the best stories that are written, and Marvel needs to get back to doing that. Those are my thoughts on Marvel's continuity / significance issues within their comics. What do you think? Am I on point? Am I off point? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe as well. Sign up for the newsletter. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and you can see all those links in the description below. Thanks, and once again, this has been John Trent with BountyIntoComics.com. Talk to you next time.